What is up, guys? How are we doing? Welcome back to another video by us, the Jedi In Exile. It is me, it's Tats, and once again I'm joined by the Norfolk Lion. How are we doing?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you, Matthew. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. We're here once again, and this time we're talking about chapter 7 slash the finale of season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett.
Mm.
Talk to me.
Last one.
Yeah, talk to me. What your thoughts?
Yeah, so let's get straight into it. So, the series of Book of Boba Fett, I think, has been brilliant. It has gone above and beyond my expectations. In the characters we've had, um, the whole thing, I think, has been absolutely brilliant. The storyline, um, but just bringing, Luke, Grogu, Mando, Ahsoka, R2, seeing all these characters. This episode wasn't its best one. That's, that was my initial thoughts when the credits were rolling. I thought, you know what, it was good, but I think it was probably guilty of the episodes before it being so awesome that it would have struggled to have lived up to all of that. I
I,
think that it's probably been guilty of its previous success.
and I would agree in that I think if we had episode 5 or episode 6 as the finale, everyone would have been like, "Wow, incredible, amazing! Like, what a way
Yeah,
to end a
especially with Grogu
series!"
being posed the question of like,
Yeah,
what are you going to choose?
and
Like, yeah.
I feel like this promised a lot.
Mm.
With the whole like the out and out war with the Pikes, like things were gonna happen. And actually, I would agree with you. I've loved the series. Do not get me wrong. Really, really enjoyed the series.
Yeah.
This episode was a little bit underwhelming for me for a finale of such a high
Yeah,
budget project.
and you know what? I think what it struggled with was, and don't get me wrong, we all love the character of Boba Fett, and his storyline, I think, was awesome. But there is a but. When we start seeing Mando, and especially the Luke and Grogu stuff, we don't care about Boba Fett. We want to see what's going on with like the new Jedi Order. We want to see what's happening with Luke Skywalker. We want to see like if he's going to train Grogu. Like we start to lose interest in who's going to be the next daimyo of Mos Espa. Like we just start losing interest, and I think that's only natural. And that's it was awesome to see those characters. We've already discussed we don't really feel like they should have been in this series. That should have been for Mando series 3. Um, but no, series as a whole, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10, 12 out of 10, whatever you want to say. This episode, I just feel like it was a little bit anticlimactic. There were some really good points that we're going to talk about, but I feel like it wasn't as good as the episodes we've had, and I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, and so I would say that that when I kind of opened up Disney Plus to sit down and watch it, off the back of last week's episode, I was like, oh, they've teed up this massive war, like essentially expecting to turn it on and probably have like an hour and a half, maybe an hour and a quarter at the very least, where they were going to set up this massive war, big kind of battle scenes, like all of that kind of stuff. And I felt like it actually ended up being maybe like 20 people. Like I was expecting like these big kind of army. Like obviously I knew that an army
But
wasn't just going to
especially
appear
they
out of
they keep
nowhere.
showing they keep showing the big like bird's eye kind of view of Mos Espa whenever they have a ship flying, like when the X-wing flew in with R2 and Grogu. You see Mos Espa at night. When um ship at the end when uh who's it at the end of the episode, there's two like transport ships have flown in, and it's such a big city, and yet we see so little of it, and there's so few fighting. It just doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah, that was kind of the disappointment for
That's
me.
being very picky, though. Can
Yeah,
we just say like
yeah,
we're being incredibly picky on that?
and we're Star
Like,
Wars
let's be
fans.
honest.
We're Star Wars fans, so we're going to be incredibly
Yeah,
picky, right? It's what we do.
yeah,
But that was my issue. Was it felt very low key, very small scale compared to some of the stuff that I felt like it was building to and promised. But I'm gonna circle back to something you touched on. So you touched on the X-wing coming in, and the cockpit opening, and everyone. I don't. I assume other people did the same thing as me, which was, well, that's Luke's X-wing. So we're gonna get Luke. Luke's coming to
I
like
know.
help fight.
I was like, oh my god, this is brilliant. Yeah.
But
It's like that moment when we saw the X-wing at the end of Mando season 2. We're like, no,
deja
surely
vu,
not.
deja vu,
Like,
deja vu.
yeah,
Except this time, we did get a payoff, just not the payoff we were expecting. So,
yeah,
um,
yeah,
we got the return of Grogu.
yeah.
So we now know that he picked the Mandalorian armor and chose to not be trained as a Jedi, or so we're being led to believe. We didn't see what happened after the choice was made, but we are making the assumption that was what's happened.
Let's not forget Luke left his Jedi training to go and help his friends, and then came back and finished his training. So Grogu could well have done the same. However, yeah, I mean, it feels like Mando season 3. We're maybe going to see obviously Grogu and Mando together as we have done in season 1 and season 2
And
of The
I
Mandalorian.
feel like
I felt like that bit they kind of ended that really nicely. That storyline that they're together, they shoot off into the distance. Like it's a nice setup for the Mando season 3.
And I feel like they dug themselves out of a hole a little bit here, because I definitely had a few questions around, well, The Mandalorian, other than the first couple of episodes, has always been the Mando Grogu dynamic has been like pretty fundamental to that
And
whole
that's been the main
situation.
storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I felt like if season 3 wasn't the two of them together, or wasn't him trying to find him, what were they going to do with it, and how was it going to feel? And so this has answered that question, I guess, as to how they're going to go. Cool to see it happen. Really heartwarming moment when Mando lifts up the like cloth, and he's underneath it, and he's a bit surprised, but also you can tell really happy to see him. And then Grogu kind of like, even though they're in the middle of a chase, jumps up into his arms, and they have a hug and stuff.
Yeah.
Like really
It was a nice moment.
quite nice to see, to be honest. So that was pretty cool. In amongst all of that mad action going on towards the end, because I feel like the episode was relatively slow up until kind of all the carnage that went on in Mos Espa. And we are making the assumption when we're chatting about this, guys, that you guys have seen the episode. So if you haven't, go watch it. Then you'll come back and you'll know what we're chatting about. But in with all of that, we got the return of an absolute badass character. We got Mr. Cad Bane back again on our screens.
Yeah.
Following up from last week. We got a really cool fight scene between him and Boba that actually,
Yeah, we did.
there wasn't tons of fighting and action in it, but it was this like old school Western Mexican standoff, much like last week's episode.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it gave me real bad, obviously, the Wild West vibes. It just struck as, two bounty hunters that have been through it all. They've been through the Republic, they've been through the Empire, and they've now been through the start of the New Republic. So it's like two old guys who are like, oh, we're just too old for this. We just want to chill out now. Like, and yeah, it was really great. My one, I suppose it is a criticism of this, is that such a big character like Cad Bane, when you've seen Clone Wars, and he's such a big part, he's like one of the main villains in Clone Wars, and he appears throughout the series, and you're kind of like been brought into live action and then killed off basically straight away. He's had like 10 minutes of airtime, and for me, you can't bring someone as huge as that in at the end of one episode and kill him halfway through the next episode. I just find that like mental. So it was really great to see him, but also I feel like, well, he's gone now. He's not. We're not going to see him again. It's quite sad because he's such a good character.
And if you guys are wanting a little bit more Cad Bane, we both absolutely love him. We're potentially going to do a video on him. If that's the sort of thing you want to see, please let us know in the comments down below if you would be interested in that. But I agree with you. I feel like that particular scene was a definite, like, You know how I kind of said to you that like Filoni's obviously a mad super fan. I know the thing that I'm now about to talk about, he kind of was involved in, so it's not even being a super fan, it's just knowing his own work. But there's a quite a famous deleted scene that never was within the Clone Wars series, where we got a Boba Cad Bane kind of standoff and fight. And I feel like this was kind of Dave Filoni. So that essentially hit the cutting room floor, got completely cut from the show, never got made. I feel like this was Dave Filoni going, I want it, and I'm making it happen in my next project. So I thought that was really cool. Sad to see him go, but fingers crossed Disney kind of flesh out some of his story with maybe some comics or some books or some other medium that we potentially get, to maybe get a little bit more of kind of what he's been up to since the end of the Clone Wars and into this part of the story. Within all of that carnage, we got a massive payoff from, I want to say, episode 2 of this series.
Yeah.
In that we got the return of the Rancor.
Yeah.
Um,
Man Rancor.
So obviously going back to episode 2, there's the comment made about being able to ride the Rancor like the Night Sisters, and Boba famously makes that reference back to the holiday special where he says, "I rode beasts 10 times the size."
Also, what's her face from the Bad Batch? The female clone. She rides a Rancor in the
Omega.
Bad Batch. Omega. Yeah.
Omega.
Omega.
So we got this awesome scene with the Rancor. So we got Boba riding the Rancor, which was badass and just looked awesome.
Yeah.
We then get this kind of
Really
scene
cool.
where the Rancor gets loose, and you and I were both chatting about this before we came on, that we get this really iconic kind of King Kong inspiration for the scene where and I've thrown the concept art up that was used at the end of the episode, that kind of just reinforces this. So we get the Rancor climb the tower and kind of hang off like King Kong does, and you can see in the concept art here that he's holding someone in his hand exactly like King Kong does, and I just thought that was a really kind of nice. We've talked about how a lot of this show and a lot of the stuff that Dave Filoni does is kind of fan service, if you want, for lack of a better phrase. It's really cool that he's taken that to the extreme, where he's not just gone, I'm going to appeal to Star Wars fans, but he's actually just gone like movie fans, anybody that's seen King Kong would instantly recognize that as like a reference to it, and I thought that was really really cool.
Yeah, 100%.
So shifting on, we got a post-credit scene this time round.
I almost missed it because I flicked off Disney and then was like, oh, maybe I should go back on just in case there is something at the end.
I made
4 minutes left of credit scenes.
I made sure. So kind of in the vein of what's been happening with the Marvel movies and with some of the other mediums that Disney's putting out, we got a really cool post-credit scene, which was set up actually by some stuff that happened during the episode. So obviously, end of last episode, Cobb Vanth gets shot. We don't know what's going on. We then get the Weequay kind of bartender guy from Freetown rock up and says, "Oh, killed him in cold blood." So the assumption is he's dead. And then the comment is made to Boba about, why aren't you in the Bacta tank? And he's like, "Oh, it's in use." So we get.
And I assumed it was Black Chrysanthemum.
Yeah. Well,
only because Boba had said, "I promise you a long soak in the Bacta tank."
Yes.
So he'd used that line, and I was like, "Oh, that's it was just in my mind." I was like, "Oh, you can't use the Bacta tank because Chrysanthemum in there."
Yeah.
And then obviously, so we then see the scene.
Yeah. So we get this scene, and then not only do we see Cobb Vanth laying in the Bacta tank, we also see the modder back from earlier in the series. So
yeah, the one who worked on Fennec. Who installed like the midriff.
Yeah. So there's
Fennec.
there's some question marks here around kind of what are they setting up here? Are they setting up Cobb Vanth to come back in Book of Boba Fett season 2 if we get one? Are they setting Cobb Vanth to come back in Mando? Or are they setting Cobb Vanth up for his own series or to be part of a series where he runs as one of the main characters? So just before we came on, I was kind of speculating that there was this kind of currently in limbo Rangers of the Republic series that was supposed to be going on, that was supposed to be is it Gina Carano, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
From her character from the Mandalorian series. Now obviously in the news she's been canned by Disney due to some political views that we won't touch on and we'll stay firmly away from, and so that there's question marks all around that project. Is this the solution? Is this a lift and shift, move across, and just essentially put somebody new in that role and let it run on?
Found a character who, yeah. I like the character of Cobb Vanth. It did seem like he was just going to be a bit of like a. We've had this discussion before about when a character's not just a cameo, but when they are actually like part of a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like he was just going to be a cameo, but actually with just that last scene, I feel like he's going to be part of a story, and it's going to be somewhere. I mean, it's not going to be this is clearly not the end of Cobb Vanth, and he could be something like governor of Tatooine or something because he's actually a good guy. Like he didn't want the spice on Tatooine, he didn't want it anywhere near Freetown, and that was his price for him sending soldiers to help Boba Fett. Whereas Boba and Fennec, I think, I mean, they say in episode 1 they go to the cantina and they're like, "We want business to continue as normal." Well, clearly spice is being traded through there, so drugs are being traded. They were okay with that, whereas Cobb Vanth seems to be in a kind of New Republic mold that they may well want someone like him running, the planet, or at least the territory, the Mos Espa, Mos Eisley. They might want him doing that. So I feel like he's a character that's going to be in something going forward.
No, 100%. I think definitely some question marks around how that's going to play out, and I think we will watch eagerly to see Mr. Timothy Oliphant on our screens a little bit more.
I'm right.
In the veins of potential spin-offs,
here we go.
We can't talk about this episode without talking about Peli Motto. She's back. She was in a substantial part of the episode, and we got some comedy scenes yet again. She's been a little bit of comic relief throughout the previous episode of Book of Boba that she was in, and throughout Mando. So I said to you, and this is maybe my slightly out there concept that I would love to see happen, but whether it or not it will, I don't know. I'm predicting we get a Disney Plus original shorts series about Peli Motto and the mayor's assistant, whatever you want to call him. Because we got a couple of comedic scenes. There was a bit where they were hiding together, and he's a character that definitely could have been written out really early on, and just kind of kept coming back and back for bit pieces. We got the quite funny scene where Boba typed that message out, and I think everybody watching knew that wasn't going to be a "yes, I surrender."
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And he got set up. So let us know down below in the comments if you agree, or if that's something you would like to see. I think it could be interesting to kind of see that relationship play out. Potentially even a little bit of a love interest thing going on there. We know that Peli is into dating all types of species, dated a Jawa. So
she's fluent in Javanese or whatever it is.
Exactly. So let's wait and see. The one question though that I'm gonna pose to you, because I feel
People
like
who
I
are
need to.
people who are regular listeners / watchers of this program now know what's coming.
I feel like I need to know the answer, and it's one thing that was left unanswered that I cannot allow to stand. What happened to Max Rebo? Is Max Rebo dead? I need to know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I was hoping we'd maybe see him in the back to tank.
Well, hey, I would have loved that. Cobb Vanth's great and all. Cobb Vanth's great and all.
Bob was like, listen, we need Tatooine's #1 music act back in Jabba's palace.
I feel like it's been sorely overlooked, mate. Who's going to fill the gap? What's going to happen? Obviously, we're joking, but it is interesting to know whether it was a deliberate choice not to have him shown in the explosion, and what they're going to do there, whether or not this is, and I'm going to go slightly meta and slightly outside of the Star Wars lore, whether Dave Filoni was told that he couldn't do anything definitive with this character because it's such an iconic character, or whether it was deliberately done because there's plans. We always say Dave Filoni's the man with the plan, and we've seen it kind of play out, so who knows. But they're kind of some of the main takeaways for me. I guess let's briefly chat predictions for Mando Season 3 off the back of this, and also potentially Book of Boba Fett Season 2 if one appears.
Yeah, so I do think that this is the end of the Luke cameos.
Okay.
I feel like if they're going to do a cameo of somebody, it's now going to be someone like Ahsoka. Because we know that obviously Ahsoka's got her own series.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel it's going to be slightly different. I think Mando... I'm intrigued with Mando because I don't know naturally what his next step is. If it's going to be he just continues to be a bounty hunter, so goes to the guild and gets, fobs that beep and just continues with that, or whether he actually goes somewhere to settle down. The one thing I am looking forward to, though, is I feel like we're going to get some kind of backstory as to what happened on Mandalore. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of pieces filled in with the Purge of Mandalore, and seeing that. I think we're going to see him meet Bo-Katan again, because she had a minor part in Mando Season 2. So I feel like we're going to see more of Bo-Katan. I feel like Sabine might be in it from Rebels. I feel like there's going to be a lot more focus on the planet Mandalore and Mandalorians. So yeah, that's my predictions for Mando Season 3. I think for Book of Boba Fett, I'm not really quite sure on this.
I think we need to.
Seems it's almost like and they lived happily ever after kind of finish to this series.
So we need to caveat this with there is no confirmed Book of Boba Fett Season 2 currently. At time of recording, there is nothing to say that there will definitely be one. I would agree with you. They've wrapped it up like fairly nicely, in that Boba at the end kind of had won the respect of the citizens of Mos Espa. Obviously there's a few loose ends in regards to kind of what happens. All of the kind of other crime bosses were taken out by Fennec, so there's a little bit of a gap there. Is that just an immediate kind of Boba comes in and takes over the whole thing? There was a little bit of kind of a nod to they might do something a little bit more with some of the mods, the way that the story played out there. Obviously the Cobb Vanth question mark, like you said, could he come back? But I feel like Boba's story isn't told, but all of the stuff that we were introduced to in this series is, in that we've seen the flashbacks play out now. We've got to the point, like this was one of the first actual Book of Boba Fett episodes, because 5 and 6 definitely weren't really Book of Boba Fett episodes, that we didn't get a flashback. So that all seems to have kind of been tied up quite neatly. So if they're going to do a Season 2, I feel like it needs to just be a complete, like, off the... I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a time jump and something's happened, and that's kind of how we kick it off, rather than picking up from now.
Mm. Mm.
Mando season 3, I think we're gonna, like you said, I think we have to find out more about Mandalore. Obviously, he's been kicked out of the Mandalorian clan.
Yeah.
I feel like Katie Sackhoff has to come back. Too big of an actress cast in that role to
Yeah.
just do like a
Yeah.
short bit in season 2.
Yeah.
I feel like the Darksaber is going to become pretty key, and I wonder whether Grogu's now being set up for having left the Jedi Order, but obviously having learnt some new Force skills. Whether we're going to get to the kind of point where Grogu inherits the Darksaber from Mando when we get the first Mandalorian Jedi of this time, you know, full circle. So big things on the horizon. Obviously, none of us know. None of us have any idea what goes on in Mr. Dave Filoni's head. But let us know down below what you guys have thought of the series. As we said, we've loved it. A little bit kind of underwhelmed. Is probably not disappointed, but underwhelmed is probably the best way to describe it. Just in this episode, yeah. But great series overall. Definitely going to get rewatched a few times. But let us know down below. Thank you for sticking around towards the end of the video. As always, we appreciate the support. Please like and subscribe if you are new here. If you're not new here, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. All the support is massively appreciated. We want to keep growing the channel and producing content for you guys. Brian, any last words from yourself?
No, thank you for sticking with us. It's been great to talk about Book of Boba Fett, and we're really excited for what's to come. So yeah, stay tuned for all of our videos. Thanks for watching again, and may the Force be with you.